everyone, Andrea here. Welcome to Karcher Makes. This is the place where I like to share all the crafty things I've been working on. And this week I have quite a bit to show. I have some knitting, I have some spinning, and I have some weaving, which is very exciting for me. So let's get into it. So first up, we will do knitting, and I have two finished objects this week. Two. Amazing, I know. I'm gonna pat myself on the back for that one. First up, these socks. You've seen these a couple times on here now. These are my Christmas Eve cast-on socks. The pattern is called Red Robin Socks by Helen, Stewart, Curious Handmade. And the yarn is Cesium Yarns Merino Sock, which is a 75-25 blend. And the colorway is called Quit Bugging Me. And I thought the green would be perfect for some Christmas Eve cast-on socks. And then also tomorrow is March 1st. So these are gonna be perfect for also St. Patrick's Day. I knit these completely to pattern with the exception of the heel. I did add in a shadow wrap heel instead of the heel flap and gusset that the pattern called for. Very easily modifiable to put in any heel and any sock that you want. Just be mindful of your patterning as you're going into the heel. You may need to make some adjustments, but for this one, didn't need to do that. And what I kind of like about this pattern in particular is that the simple slip stitches that are included here, they really break up the highly variegated yarn that I'm working with, and what that does is it keeps it from pooling or flashing too much. Now, define for yourself what too much is, but I like a little bit of pooling, I like a little bit of flashing, I like when it does this sort of self kind of stripey situation sometimes that you can kind of see here where it looks like little micro stripes. But for me, I really like an interesting texture to kind of pair with that highly variegated type yarns like this one. So when I posted these on, I think it was Blue Sky, someone had asked, hey, your heels look nice. How do you avoid ladders when you're doing the slip, knit decreases? And the answer for this example was kind of simple, which is the shadow wrap heel does not use slip, knit decreases. So therefore, I don't have that problem with these socks. However, it kind of got me thinking about how I deal with that under normal circumstances. And really what I do is quite simple. I will do my slip, knit, and then the next stitch over after that, I just kind of tug it a little bit. I don't like rip out the tension or anything like that, but I just give it a little snug tug, if you will. And what that does is it allows that next stitch after the decrease to really kind of snug together. And I could probably show this better on actual knitting, but I don't have that prepared and I just thought about sharing this. But what it does is it allows that second stitch to just kind of hug up nicely with the decrease, and then it avoids that kind of laddering situation that happens in between them. So try that the next time that you're maybe doing a heel flap and gusset, for example, and you may get an issue with the laddering situation happening with your decreases. Just tug a little bit on that second stitch. See how you like that. See if that makes the tension work a little bit better for you. But in any case, back to these socks. These are done. I love them, and I'm probably gonna wear them for St. Patrick's Day here in the next week or so. Second finished object, more socks. I finished the Valentine's cast on. We're all about the holidays today. We've covered 3 already. These were my Valentine's Day cast on socks. This yarn is Opal 4-ply, which is a 75-25 merino nylon blend. And the colorway was called Sweet Kiss. And it's these variegated and solid, semi-solid type self-striping, but the the stripes are very sort of inconsistent in width, which I really enjoy. I feel like it adds a lot of interest to the socks, and I love these colors together. Purple and green together, love it. So there's those, and for these, this is just my kind of standard vanilla sock pattern, which is for my size foot. I wear a US 7.5-ish, and I find that US 1 needles, 2.25 millimeter, 64 stitches for the cuff, and I do my socks top down. For the cuff, I do 2x2 rib. I feel like 2x2 rib is the best sort of ribbing for me with keeping the socks up where they're supposed to be and not having them slouch down. And then this is 12 rows. I just do it until it's like an inch or so, and sometimes it's 15, sometimes I do 20. It just really depends on what I feel like, but these turned out beautifully, and I did make an effort to make these match, and they are very, very good on the match. And the way that I do that, it does waste a tiny, tiny bit of yarn. What I do is when I start the cake, I find where the next color repeat ends, and then I try to measure out my cast on from that point, add my knot so that I can get it on the needle, and then I do my cast on, and then whatever's left I kind of just put to the side. Sometimes it's just a little bit that I just kind of toss. Sometimes it's like a yarn ball that I end up just setting to the side, but that's how I've kind of got to the point where I can get them to be more matching without having to guess at it or measure like with the yardstick and all of that. But I love these two, and I'm excited to wear them. Speaking of these socks though, let me ask you guys this. This is commercial yarn, commercially spun, milled, dyed yarn, and they come in these sort of skeins, hanks, skeins. Do you guys reskein this, recake this into a cake before you make socks or whatever you're making with it, before you work with it? Do you recake it or do you just work from this? Because I was like halfway through the first sock, and this, I do an outer pull. I don't pull from the center because I always get yarn barf. But I was pulling from the outside, and it just like kept getting hung up, and I had to keep pulling it. And I thought at that point, I really should have just rescanned this into a cake, and it would have been a lot easier. So tell me what you guys do. Do you recake commercially scanned yarn or no? Also, are you team center pull or team outer pull? I'm pretty much team outer pull 90% of the time. Let me know. Let's talk whips now. And I have one new sweater that I cast on, and I have a second one that I really, really want to cast on. I want to try to get this one finished more. Let's just talk about it. This whip has been on my plans since Maryland Sheep and Wool of last year. At Yarn Centric before Maryland Sheep and Wool, the day before Maryland Sheep and Wool, I saw somebody wearing the sweater. I've talked about this like on other episodes, and I'm apologizing now for being redundant and talking about it again, but I saw somebody wearing the sweater. I asked them what it was. It was this sweater, and I really wanted to make it. And then the next day at Maryland Sheep and Wool, I found the yarn that is perfection for it. So let's talk about it. And we're gonna start with the yarn first. So this yarn, it's this pink color with orange, yellow, purpley speckles. And the yarn is Kim Dye's Yarns. The colorway is called Bunch of Zinnias. And this is on her Napoleon sock, which is 80/20 superwash merino and silk. Very nice yarn. And I think you can kind of see a little bit of the sheen. I don't know, it's a lot easier to see in real life. I'm not sure if the camera's really picking it up, but the silk adds just that little bit of sheen to it, which I think is nice. So yeah, Kim Dye's Yarns. Colorway is called Bunch of Zinnias. And P.S. if you like cut flowers, you like growing flowers, get you some zinnias, y'all. These things are so hardy, they're impossible to kill, and they grow super fast, and they make really nice cut flower bouquets. So think about that. I try to grow them every year, and I really enjoy them. But bunch of zinnias, colorway, and the sweater. This is the Petal Party Crop by Samantha Guerin, and I know I just made one of her patterns. That one wasn't in the plan. That was a last minute game time decision, but this one has always been in the plan. I'm actually going to show you the back, because the way this is cast on is you start at the back shoulder and you knit flat for basically what is becoming across the back and the top of the shoulder. And then you pick up stitches and then you start the front. So I've just finished the back and I've just started that stitch pickup and a couple rows of the front. And it has this eyelet lace that runs down both sides of the back and both sides of the front. And it's super pretty. And the pattern calls for it to be fairly cropped. The measurement from like the underarm to the bottom of the hem would be, I think, like 8¼ inches. I'm probably gonna make it a little longer than that. I like my tops to fit at least hip length, so we'll see how that goes. I'm probably gonna have to try this on several times to kind of get the length to the point that I want it, but so far so good on this. There have been a couple snafus where I've had to rip back and fix the lace portion where I've made mistakes, but for the most part, the pattern is pretty clear. I did have to go look at pictures on how to do the pickups on the shoulders, and I'm pretty sure I made a mistake on the first 2 pieces for this, which is why I was so confused, but now that it's together, you can't see. I just went to Ravelry, I pulled completed project pages where I could get pictures of what it looked like after the fact, so that greatly helped me understand where I was supposed to be picking up. But there's that. She's well on her way. I'm hoping that this does not take an incredible long amount of time to do, because what I would like to do is, you know, Mother Nature willing, if we get warm weather for Maryland Sheep and Wool weekend, I would love to be able to wear this. So there's that. Very exciting. There's another sweater in my near future, and I have a good idea of what I think I want it to be, but as we're kind of going through this, if you have other thoughts, let me know in the comments. But I've had this yarn from Feederbrook Farms in my stash. I think I bought this during the pandy, so 5 years now, y'all. 5 years since the pandy started. Who knew? Who knew? Anyway, so Feederbrook Farms, they are quite local to me. They are the closest yarn producer to my house, and you know, I like to say I could throw a rock and hit it if I wanted to. Quite close to me. And what they do, so one, they grow their own wool, they mill their own wool, and basically this is all done there. Right? It's a complete like local operation, which I really appreciate. But what they do is every once in a while, they will have what's called mill ends. And mill ends are exactly what they sound like. They're the ends of the spinning process, and what happens is it's not enough length to make a full skein by itself. So what they do is they bundle up these little kind of shorter skeins wind them together into this like giant hank. This thing's like the size of my head and I love it. And then you get it at like a discount. These were, I think she sells these for $40 and it is 520 yards of 100% BFL. And again, totally local operation. P.S. Today is February 28th, which is Don't Buy Anything Day. So there's that. But if you're new here, I really love supporting local makers, local dyers, local mills. That's my jam. That's what I like doing. So in any case, I have three giant yarn babies of these mill ends. And Ambi Marie Knits had mentioned, or she posted a project with Feederbrook Farm, and I was like, oh, I just remembered I have all those mill ends in my stash. What can I make with them? I want to make something. So I decided these needed to be a sweater, in particular a cardigan. And before I went too far down the rabbit hole of what these wanted to be, I figured I should make a swatch. Y'all, I'm a big girl knitter now. I made a swatch. I even wet blocked it as well. And I'm not sure why I have been so stubborn with not making swatches. It literally took me maybe an hour to knit this, and then, you know, the time it takes to block and dry. So helpful, so helpful. I get it now. Am I a swatcher? Maybe. I think so. But so what I did here, and let me grab this other one. So you can kind of see. So I don't remember which one this came out of, but this is one of the mini skeins that are in these kind of packages, this giant yarn baby of multiple mini skeins. So this was one of them. And the reason why I chose this one to swatch with is because the color was so different than all of the other yarns that I didn't feel like if I put it into a sweater, this color would really mesh well with kind of all the other ones that are more, that are less contrasty, right? Like all of these are two colors put together, and then this one is one color with black, and it was too contrasty. It's also sparkly, which I don't think is showing up on camera. So I pulled that little kind of mini skein out of one of these bunches to make the swatch. And I even went online and I followed a tutorial on how to make a swatch correctly, because apparently there's wrong ways to do it, y'all. Today I learned, wasn't today, it was last weekend, but there's that. And my stitch gauge is, I'm right around 21 or 22. Now, hindsight being 2020, like I mentioned, I picked this one because it had the black in it and it didn't really mesh well with the other colors. That made it very hard to count stitches when I was measuring the gauge for this. But in any case, I'm right around 21 to 22 inches. There are some inconsistencies because this is just the nature of the way the yarn is spun, but all in all, I would call this a 21 to 22 stitch gauge over 4 inches or 10 centimeters. And based on this stitch gauge, I went to Ravelry and I looked around several different cardigans, and this is basically DK weight. I don't know if I mentioned that. Basically a DK weight gauge, and my gauge is 21 to 22 stitches for 4 inches, 10 centimeters. And I was looking around Ravelry and I knew I wanted a cardigan. I knew I wanted it to be a V-neck cardigan, and I wanted something with buttons. So it's almost like that grandpa style cardigan. And I know those tend to be pretty popular right now, especially with like beige and neutral tones. I thought it would be fun with this yarn in particular. So I landed on one that is probably going to be the one, but if you have some other ideas, leave some comments below and inspire me. So I landed on the Calm Down Cardigan by Lily Kate France. The stitch gauge on that one I think is more on the 22 to 23 side stitches, 4 inches, 10 centimeters. But this pattern also has a lot of ease built into it. The model is wearing an example that has 10 inches of ease, which is a lot. And we've talked about like my issues with a lot of positive ease on here. So if I do choose to make this cardigan, what I'm probably going to do is make kind of a smaller-ish size. So normally I would make a 40, but because again, it has 10 inches of ease built in, I may make whatever the next size down is to kind of compensate for that. We'll see. We're gonna find out what happens there, but I'm super excited to use this languishing stash yarn, and I feel like with the way this is spun, the barber poling, the various colors, I think it's gonna be neat. So next, let's talk about spinning. And like I mentioned in the last sit-down episode, I was able to get into the yarn and texture class at Maryland Sheep and Wool, and the teacher is Jillian Moreno. I have her book, and I am so excited to learn from the best. Problem is, I don't have any cleared bobbins, so I pulled out my wheel. It had a project on it since 2023, and I actually remember the day that I started it because there was a really bad storm here. I got caught in a tornado. It took me an hour to drive home the 2 miles from where that happened, and we had no electricity for 4 days, so I was like, well, let's spin because it requires no electricity whatsoever, and I can kind of do it in the dark. In any case, this has been languishing on my wheel forever, and I finally got it done, but not without some mistakes, boo-boos, accidents. I don't know. We're going to talk about it. So the fiber that I used is from Knitty Color, and they don't dye anymore. I'm sad. They were one of my faves of all time. And I chose to do this as a fractal spin. So I basically took the braid, I split it in half lengthwise, and then the one half I spun on one bobbin, and then the second half I split that again end to end, lengthwise, and half, and then spun those end to end. Now, like I mentioned, this has been sitting around since 2023, and when I went to go ply this together, and let me just show you the yarn real quick. How pretty is this, by the way? It reminds me of a mermaid. It's so pretty. So when I went to go ply this last weekend, I noticed that my bobbins were not evenly full compared to one another. The one had a lot more fiber on it, and I was like, oh, that's weird. Not really sure what's going on there. So I just went ahead, plied it. I just did a 2-ply. This is just a simple 2-ply, and it's about a fingering to sport weight in terms of the weight of the yarn. And I got to the end of it, and I was like, oh, that plied very quickly. And then, you know, I wet finished it, dried it. I'm like, look how skinny this skein is. Something is amiss here. This doesn't seem like the right amount of yarn for what I would normally get out of a 4-ounce braid. So I had on the second bobbin, I still had a significant amount of singles on there. So I was like, well, I gotta do something with that. Let me just make and this has not been wet finished, and we're gonna talk about that in a second. So I just took what was left on that second bobbin and I chain plied it. So I made this a 3-ply with what was left over on the bobbin. And this is a pretty significant amount. So again, as I was kind of going through this process, I was very confused on why this was happening. So when I finished the project, wet finished this, dried it, had this scanned up. This needs to be wet finished. I went digging in I have a basket downstairs that has some fiber in it. So I'm like, okay, what can I play with next now that that's done? Y'all, I found this. This is the rest of the fiber from the project. So when I said the second bobbin didn't look like it had a lot less yarn on it, I only spun half of it. So this is only, what, 2/3 of the fiber? No, half the fiber? Like, this whole piece is still left. I don't know, do the fractions. Now what am I gonna do with this now that this is done? I don't know. Here's the tip. Here's the pro tip. 1, write down what you're doing. I'm doing that now. I have my journal. You could go see that video. I'll link it below. I posted it last week. 1, write down what you're doing so you remember. And 2, kind of keep stuff together and don't separate the fiber from the spinning so that I have to remember, oh yeah, the rest of the fiber is in a completely different place than where this project is. So I guess I'll have like a little mini skein to go with this too. But something I want to talk about here real quick, and look, I'm still taking classes. I'm still learning to be a better spinner. I would not say I'm an expert, but I've done it enough that I've learned a few things on the way. And this is something that I want to share with everybody. So this yarn has been wet finished. And what that means is I've plied it, I wound it off on a nitty knotty, and my boyfriend made me a nitty knotty out of PVC pipe because I'm cheap about certain things. I'm cheap about certain things. Wound it off. I put it in the sink with a little bit of wool wash, some warm water. And then what I do after that is I just call it my wet finishing process. I don't know what the official name of that is. But when it comes off, it gets really sort of twisty and sort of tangly. And while it's wet, I kind of do this, where I snap it a few times and I go around. And basically what I'm trying to do there is move that energy of the twist throughout the skein so that there's not segments that are like coily and they look overspun, but sometimes they're not overspun. They're just, full of energy, and you need to kind of coax it around. So I do some snapping while this is, again, wet. And then I also whack it I literally take it and I hit it on a towel on the floor. So that can also help move the energy through the yarn, through the fibers, and then it evens the tension out. So you can see here, this is a fairly balanced yarn. It's not kinking up on itself. It's not twisting on itself. So that tells me it's really balanced. Now, compare and contrast that to this 3-ply that I have. And again, the plies are different, so it's gonna look thicker, but if I undo this, you can see what I mean. This has not been wet finished. Do you see this mess? I wouldn't try to knit with this without finishing it first. So what I still need to do here is, like I mentioned, this will go in the sink. And this is exactly what that one looked like before I wet finished it, by the way. It was kinky and coily, and you know, the energy was in the strands, and they just wanted to like kind of go back together and kind of apply back on themselves. So again, what I'll do with this one is I'll put it in a sink of warm water, a little bit of wool wash, let it soak, let it have a nice little bath, take it out. And I do wrap it in a towel so that it's not dripping wet as I do this, but take it out of the towel. I'll give it a couple of these, whatever you want to call this, snapping. I call it snapping, I don't know. This is all my very untechnical terms. I do that a few times, and then I will thwack it on the floor on a towel. And then what I'll do is I'll kind of hook it on a coat hanger and hang it up in a window where it can dry. And then this will quickly turn into something that looks more like this. So I don't know. Does that help you guys? Does that help you guys, you fellow spinners out there, with your yarn balance and your tension, kinetic energy that is in those fibers? Hopefully that helps. So I have no idea what I'm going to do with that fiber. It's going to go in the box and then maybe get incorporated into a project sometime soon. But let's talk about weaving next. So this is a project that has been on my loom for quite some time. I'm not fast at anything, y'all. This is why, you know, it takes me a little time in between episodes to get things done. I'm not fast at anything. So this project is a set of 4 dish towels, and I have a shocked 8 shaft floor loom. It's 36 inches wide. And what I wanted to experiment with in this project was really kind of 2 things. Number 1 was using a variegated yarn paired with a plain white warp, just to see how the colors sort of interact with one another as they're being woven together. And then the second thing I wanted to experiment with is getting different designs out of the same warp. So to really understand what I'm saying, I need to further explain, maybe for those of you that don't know how a loom works. So you have shafts, which is where your threads go through, and as you press the treadles, which are the petals that your feet work to move those shafts up and down, that combination of lifting threads or lowering threads is what makes the design and the cloth. And you can do the threading of those shafts one way and then change it into numerous designs based on how you're lifting them in sequence. So basically what I've done here is I've warped the loom once with 1 threading pattern, and what I happen to use for these was called a Rosepath twill, which is basically a triangle with a dot in the middle at the bottom. So what that does is it helps give you a lot of options for various sort of triangle designs, diamonds, that kind of thing. You'll see when I show you the actual cloth, maybe some of those options. But what I really wanted to experiment with was same warp, same threading. I'm not changing how the loom is dressed. All I changed between these is how those treadles were tied up. And when you kind of think about those combinations and how they work together with one another, you really can get infinite, almost infinite sort of designs and possibilities. So let me just show you this cloth, and I love all of them. So like I mentioned, I used a white warp for all of these, and then this kind of purpley blue for the weft, and these are both 8/2 cotton, which for my knitter friends here, that basically equates to like a lace weight yarn. It's very sort of tiny, and I've already hemmed these, so I don't have any to show you here, but in any case, so this is the first one that I did, and this was one tie up based on that threading pattern. And you can really see here what I'm talking about when I say the triangle with the dot in the middle. When you put those together, in this particular example, it makes a diamond with dots in the middle. So hopefully that makes sense. And then this one is really interesting. This one, when I changed the treadle tie up, it made this pattern. And it's kind of hard to see on the camera. I'm kind of looking at it in the viewfinder, but it really does look like little flowers or snowflakes. We were debating in my house whether it was a flower or a snowflake. There's that one. And then this one. I really like this one, and I want to make more, and I think I want to make a blanket like this. This is a waffle weave texture. And again, same loom dressing, same threading. All I did was change the way in which the treadles were tied up to those shafts, and then it moves those shafts in different sequences. And it made this. And this is, again, a waffle weave, which basically means you have some longer, and I don't know if they call them floats in weaving. So similar to color work knitting, you have your float in the back. This kind of has this little float in the front. And when it's under tension, it looks very much kind of similar almost to like this, right? Where it's a very flat texture. But once you take it out of the tension, because you have those floats and then you wet finish these, it kind of scrunches up, and it's almost like, I feel like everybody knows like the waffle weave shirts, the waffle weave kitchen towels. That's exactly what this is. It's very squishy, very soft, and I think it would make an amazing blanket. So I don't know, maybe that's in my future one day with this whole weaving journey that I've started. And then the last one is just plain weave. Again, you don't need 8 shafts to do that. It's just over under. But I wanted to see how these colors kind of looked together with the white. Now I did have to hem all of these, and luckily I have that new sewing machine that made quick work of that process. But it's just a simple rolled hem. Don't judge my unevenness of the hems, but these are going to be used in my kitchen. Like, these are not going to be precious items. They will be used and they will be abused, and I feel like that's really what I kind of like about weaving in particular, is that you can make very practical items that are very usable in your everyday life, versus kind of like what we do with knitting, where I make an art piece sweater and maybe I wear it 3 times a year. These are getting used every day. So that's all I have for you in terms of the actual making portion of this program. I do have a little bit of life stuff to share, although it is sort of knitting adjacent. So, you know, I feel like there's a connection there. So I shared this on Instagram, but I also want to share it here. I have signed up for the Knit for Food Knit-a-thon that is sponsored by Laura Nelken, and it's going to be on Saturday, April 5th. It's an all day, you knit all day. I think it's 10 to 10, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., 12 hours, knit, 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 knit. And all of the money being raised goes to various food-based charities. And I'm actually going to do a separate video on Knit for Food and why I want to participate, because, you know, I've been touched in my life by food insecurity, and I've kind of, you know, hinted at that in some of my other videos, but I really want to sit down and just explain why I've chosen to do this, why I think it's important, especially in this this world that we're living in today. Highly important, and hopefully you guys are inspired to either join a team or donate to the cause. So the team that I joined is Nitty Natty's Love and Stitches team. The last time I checked, there were about 10 people on the team. I haven't checked recently, so it's hopefully more than that by now. But the way it works is you sign up. You can sign up individually. You can sign up for a team. And then if you get $100 in donations, you also get an invite to the Zooms that Laura Nelkin puts on that day, various points throughout the day. So I don't know. I think it would be fun. The money goes to a good cause, and I really want to sort of give back to that community that I've personally taken from. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate all of you. I'm gonna go work on that Petal Party crop and then maybe cast on the cardigan with the Feederbrook Farms yarn. But if you have any other suggestions for cardigans that you think would look nice with that, leave them below. Drop a comment below. Inspire me. So I'll see you next time. Until then, happy making.